Hello, and welcome to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I'm Dr. Jaime G. Raygoza, a life coach, psychologist, and your host. Join me on a journey to inspire and transform ordinary lives into something special. Here, we celebrate the unicorns, those who choose not to follow the ordinary conventional path, but rather chase after their dreams and choose the path less taken, making them truly unique. Together, we'll explore powerful life coaching techniques and hear from special guests who embody the spirit of unicorns in their own way. What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finding the Unicorn in You. Today, I have a very special individual who's nationally recognized behavioral change expert, best-selling author, success coach, and the founder of Made for Success, helping organizations not only identify but achieve their goals. He has been working with individuals and businesses alike since 2001 and holds certifications spanning neurolinguistics programming, Maxwell leadership coaching, behavioral change, hypnosis, emotional intelligence, and lifestyle management coaching. I'll let him share more about himself. So without further ado, welcome Mike Breeze.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, you have a very extensive background and a very impressive background. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what even got you in the interest into this career?
Let me tell you, it's a long story. I don't know if we've got time for everything. It's been a roller coaster. And I love talking about achieving goals. And I love telling people, and people ask me all the time, with everything, the one thing that stands out for whatever reason, when people hear the word hypnotist, it's like their ears perk up. They're like, wait, tell me more about that. Because we have this belief system and different things. And so one thing I always tell people, if there was a secret, if ever there was a secret, I should say, it's learn to enjoy the ride. If you can do that, everything else is a cakewalk. And let me tell you, my life, it has been a roller coaster. It has been a lot of fun. Yeah. And so what I do now, and that I've really done off and on, I would say part-time. I'm not going to say it was full-time all the way through, because when I got started, let me tell you, you've got to eat. And you don't have that many people coming to you when you're starting out with anything. And you're thinking, gosh, I really want to do this. I want to make a difference. But the problem is other people don't believe in you yet, or other people, they want to see your success stories. And it was a roller coaster. So when I was in college, I had a psychology class and we had to take it, just a basic psychology class. And as we were going home for our Christmas break, our professor was Dr. Kirby. I'll never forget his name. He said, I want you to find somebody that achieved a goal or overcome something. Doesn't really matter. And I want you to interview them. Ask them, how did they achieve their goal? What did they do? And it was the craziest thing, because I thought, man, who am I going to talk to? I grew up in Ryan, Oklahoma. Okay. We've got 750 people in the town. Okay. I graduated fourth in my class and was still in the bottom half. Okay. Little bitty school. But then I remembered, I thought, my mom. See, I grew up in the 80s and my mom was a smoker. A lot of people were, and I'm not bashing her. That's actually her overcoming that. And she had tried everything to quit smoking. She tried the patch. She had tried the gum. At one point, she even put a rubber band around her wrist. And every time she wanted a cigarette, she'd snap that rubber band. And it was really cute too, because she had this bruise around her wrist when she'd hold her cigarette up. It was really cute. But nothing seemed to work long term. And so I thought, I'm going to interview my mom. And when I did, she told me the story of how she finally quit. And it was real simple. It was basically my dad made a bet with her and she said, I just quit cold turkey. And I thought, there's got to be more to the story. I want to know the secret. What was it? I'm telling you, when I returned back to college, I started studying everything you can imagine, from neurolinguistics programming, hypnosis, coaching, anything I could do, anything I could read, any class I could take. And it really just started from there, and it just grew and grew.
I completely love that. And it's just like that curiosity of you wanting to know how people finish like their goals, or from setting it to finishing it. And then it's that middle piece. I think that all of us are trying to figure out, how do I accomplish something?
There's another thing that I learned in college, and I'm sure you've heard this. I think a lot of people have heard it. Knowledge equals power. For me, that is probably the worst quote of our generation. knowledge is part of the equation. It's part of it, but it's not the entire equation. And Les Brown talks about that as well. Matter of fact, I was speaking at a conference. There's the first time that I'd heard him say this. He gets up on stage and he says, knowledge doesn't equal power. And he goes into his story, and it's his story, so I'll let him share it. But knowledge plus action. You've got to have action. You've got to have that middle piece. And so you can set a goal all day long. In my book, it's called Beyond Smart. Now, you've probably heard the SMART acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. But you got to go beyond that. You got to go beyond setting your goal. You've got to implement, and there's a strategy. And I always tell people there's no secret to success, but there is a process. And so that's what I've spent all these years really diving into.
And it's an interesting thing that you've studied. And I think a lot of us are trained to create SMART goals, to create some type of vision board, whatever it may
Yeah.
be, to put a dartboard. Where's my destination? Where am I trying to go? But even with me, as I'm coaching clients, one of the things that they think, okay, I'm going to book 3 or 4 sessions with you. We're going to create these goals, and then suddenly I'm going to finish them. When these goals are like 2, 3, 4 years in the making. And it doesn't work like that. There's not a magic pill that you take, and then suddenly you get from point A to point Z. You have to go through B through X, be able to finish. And it's a lot of it is mental work. It's mindset work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always tell people we want the secret sauce. We want the silver bullet. And I tell people, listen, it takes work. We don't want to hear that. Nobody wants to tell you that. It doesn't sell because we want it quick and we want it easy. But you're not going to walk across your yard one day and trip and fall into a big pile of success. Okay. Now you may trip and fall into a big pile of something, but it's not going to be success. It doesn't work that way. And people, a lot of times we don't want to hear that. We want the shortcut. And the shortcut is follow the process. That's your shortcut.
Definitely. And what are some things that you've learned that you help clients with? What are the biggest barriers that you've seen that stop somebody from, once they set the goal, to finish it?
Yeah, everybody's unique. That's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people, number one is the fear of failure. I think a lot of people that, especially once we get into adulthood, I think it's probably one of the biggest, at least with the people that I've worked with. So other people may say, no, mine's bigger than that. Fair enough. The people I've worked with, I would say if I had to choose one, it would be the fear of failure, because as we get out of high school, as we get out of college, we start getting into the career field. Well, we go to work, we work 40 hours a week, or maybe even longer than that now. We come home, we do a few chores, we go to bed, we wake up, we do it again. And we get very comfortable in that. And so because of that, we know the income that's coming in, we can plan around that, we get comfortable and we get complacent. But if we try something different, what if it goes wrong? You're always going to find what you're looking for. And unfortunately, most people, they begin to look at what could go wrong instead of what could go right. And by nature, I think it's by design, we look for the negativity from a primitive state. We got to see what can hurt us. Is the T-Rex going to attack us? What's the bad things out there? And it's by design. But in today's day and age, listen, I've got a story of COVID, not belittling it at all, but it shut my business down. I go around speaking to audiences. It literally shut me down. So fear sets in. And you can either let it really control you, or you can control it. And you say, no, I'm not going to focus on what can go wrong. Let's focus on what can go right. And so I live my life a little different, but I think the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, I think that's going to be your biggest one for most people.
And I completely agree with you there. I can't even tell you how many times, even for myself, where they won't do something or I won't do something because in my mind, it takes a split second for you to convince yourself not to do something, because you're like, oh, what's the point of me trying if I'm going to fail? Or what if it does fail? Why am I going to invest all this money, all this time, all this effort into something that may or may not work? That's risk.
It is. Yeah. And one thing that I tell people on that too, thank goodness that it wasn't up to me to invent the light bulb, because the story goes, whether it's true or not, it took Thomas Edison 10,000 tries of getting it wrong before he got it right. Listen, I'm pretty persistent, but after about the fifth time, you and I, we're going to be sitting in a dark room. Okay. I'm just going to give up. And I think a lot of people have that. And we were talking a little bit before. I think we want things and we want it now. It's not entitlement. It's just we want it ASAP, basically. And the problem with that is a lot of times we don't understand, we don't get everything right now. We're not entitled. We deserve everything. We deserve whatever you want, but you're not entitled to it. You have to understand there's going to be a process or maybe a little bit of time there. And sometimes people aren't willing to put out the effort and the time.
I completely agree. And I think some people underestimate what are some sacrifices you're going to have to do in order for you to reach that.
Yes. Yes. And I love you said that. I've been married for 13 years. And my wife, before we got married, we sat down and I said, listen, this is not a deal breaker. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I'm willing to go either way. I really am. Do you want to make $1 million? By the way, I actually think that's actually easy for most people. It really is. Or do you want to make 1 million memories? Now, the reason I say it's easy to make $1 million, I'm piggybacking off what you said. It's easy if you're willing to make the sacrifices. You may have to sacrifice your time, your relationships, your weekends. But if you're willing to do that to make $1 million, especially today, pretty easy. But you may have to sacrifice more than what you're willing to sacrifice. And my wife, she didn't know how much of a free spirit I really am, I think, at the time. But she said, I want to make 1 million memories. And some people are blessed. They're able to do both. But let's face it, not all of us are. And it's a hustle. And yeah. But you're always going to find what you look for.
Oh, definitely. And the thing is, as long as you try and you make educated guesses and risks, not just throwing as many darts as you can until you hit it, do some research, actually ask for help, hire people like yourself that actually knows what they're doing, and you'll reach success. But it's not going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. It's going
to and it's not always going to be easy, because I've been the dart thrower. So with the hypnosis, I do comedy stage hypnosis shows. In 2013, at the time, I was working full time at the police department. I was a police officer for 8 years. But my wife and I went to Branson, and out there I met a gentleman, said, would you like to bring your show out here? I kid you not. Now, I'm one of these trial and errors guys. I'm not recommending you or your listeners to be like me at all, because I'm a trial and error kind of guy. On a handshake deal, I quit my job, sold my house, and moved to Branson. Now, that deal fell through. I have no home now. We found another venue that took us. It wasn't the best situation. Did not work out at all. But what it did, it taught me that we're stronger than you think you are. Because when you put yourself in situations like that, and if you're like me, I like to eat. And I like having a roof over my head. You got to figure it out now. There's no excuses. And so I didn't have that safety net of a job. If this doesn't work out, oh, it's okay. That wasn't an option for me. I've got to make this work. And so even though that didn't work out, and this is where I talk about in the GOAT method, about being open-minded, you've got to be willing to adapt and say, you know what, if this doesn't work out, that's okay. But what can I learn from this and use it over here? And if you're willing to do that, you're doing okay. You're doing okay.
I like that. Now, that's a good transition into my next question. What is the GOAT method that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I tell people the GOAT method, and either they get really excited or they get very hesitant. So I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Now, I'm a little dude, but I love basketball. I've always loved basketball. At 5'9", I knew I couldn't play college. But I grew up in the Michael Jordan era, and I loved watching Michael Jordan. And that's the first time I ever heard of the quote unquote, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Since I've been studying what separates people from just setting goals to actually achieving goals, and I've been working with people since 2001. It's hard to believe that I'm that old, or at least it is for me. But what I did, and this was probably 5 or 6 years ago now, that I started looking at everybody that I work with, and I said, listen, because I love patterns, what common denominators do these people have over here? What are they doing? And I'm not saying that these are the only 4 things they're doing. There may be other things, but it's like making a cake. You've got your base to make the cake. You can add vanilla and you got a vanilla cake. You can add chocolate, you've got a chocolate cake. But still yet you've got your foundation to make a cake. And so what I discovered, there's 4 things that everybody does. So I got creative, I should say, to spell out GOAT, just mainly so I could remember what it is. And there's subcategories under that, of course. But number 1, you've got to get specific. There's 6 things you have to be specific on, not just setting a SMART goal, which is one of them. You do need to be specific on your goal, but there's 6 things that I've noticed people are specific on. The second thing, which I've already talked about a little bit, you've got to learn to be open-minded. Too many people are what I call closed-minded. In one of the books I've read, they called a fixed mindset. We have the Debbie Downers, the Eeyores. It's not going to get any better. Listen, you are the captain of your own ship. If it ain't going to get better, it's nobody's fault but your own, because you can change it. Every day you wake up is a do-over. Every day. I remember growing up and Ryan would play kickball. I don't know if y'all ever played kickball. And when the pitcher would roll the ball, you could hold your hand up and say, hey, I want a do-over. It wasn't bouncy enough or whatever. Every day we get a do-over. And you have to have this open mindset. And there's 4 ways. There's really more than that, but 4 that I talk about in my book about how to have an open mindset. The A in the GOAT method is none other than action. You've got to take action. I read a study actually yesterday, and they call it the 2-minute rule now. No matter what you're wanting to do, just take 2 minutes. Just dedicate 2 minutes to achieving that, because and I can relate to this. If you're wanting, here it is at the time of this recording, we're January 8th. A lot of people want to lose weight. They want to go to the gym more. If you can just show up to the gym, study after study proves you're probably going to work out, but you got to get there. So that's where the 2-minute rule comes in. I did not create the 2-minute rule, but you've got to take action. There's 5 action steps that most people take. And then the T. The T is the one, these are all important. Every one of them to me are just as important as the other. If you were to ask me, Mike, which one of these would stand out the most, I would say that the T is the one I spend the most time with most people. And it's talk. Not necessarily how we talk to other people, but how we talk to ourselves. And I've got the laundry list of why that's so important, and the studies behind that is crucial. We always say we should treat others like we treat ourselves. I wouldn't. I wouldn't treat my worst enemy like I treat myself. I'm telling you, I'm my worst enemy in my head sometimes. And I think most people can relate to that. And we've got to learn to recondition ourselves to where we become our best friend, not our worst enemy. So that's the GOAT method in a nutshell. We can dive as deep as you want. This is stuff that I love talking about this. I really do.
No, I completely like that. And I agree with every step of that, with trying to be successful, trying to get out of your head, really trying to do what you got to do in order to achieve your goal. And I do want to go into the last one, which is the T for talk.
Yes.
There's, as much as I say this to the clients that I work with, friends, family, those ants, those automatic negative thoughts come in super quick and they start flooding your brain very fast if you don't know how to stop them.
Yes.
And that's going to be your worst enemy when you're trying to do something new or do something challenging that is scary for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first time I heard this, and there's studies that have backed this up too, but when you hear a piece of information like, oh, that sounds good, it actually has been backed up by scientific research now. It may be off 1 or 2, but it says it takes 10 compliments to cancel out 1 negative statement. Okay. So the way I heard it first, not as nice, but this is the way that I heard it. It takes 10 data boys to cancel out 1, you stupid. Okay. So if those numbers are correct, and they are pretty close on most scales, more modern research has said that we have between 6,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. I don't know. I've read both of them. We have a lot of thoughts every day. Okay. I'm not going to say we have 6,000. I'm not going to say 6. We have a bunch. the number doesn't matter. Of those, it's been said time and time again that 80% of those thoughts we have every day, 80% are negative. Okay, now then, let's go a little bit further down. 90% of those negative thoughts, okay, 90% of those are actually repeated from the day before. Okay. So now if it's a 10-to-1 ratio here, you can see where we're getting in trouble really quick. Now, let's kick it up one more. When we verbalize it, okay, it can intensify that negative thought an additional 4 to 7 times. In hypnosis, we have what's called the critical factor. What I tell people is it's just a filter between the conscious and the subconscious mind, basically, for simplicity's sake. And it filters out a lot of different information, keeping us, our subconscious, in a more safer state. If a stranger tells me something, I may not take it as personal, but here's the kicker. If I tell myself something, it bypasses that critical factor because I'm saying it. So even if I'm joking, and by the way, the subconscious just receives information. It doesn't know positive or negative. It just receives it. If I say something jokingly, and I'm going to do it now, and I'm really building a habit not to do this, but I'm going to do it as an example here. If I say, oh, I'm such an idiot, because I've verbalized, that can be 4 to 7 times 10. So now we're looking at 40 to 70 times more powerful. It's going to take me 70 times of praising myself to just cancel that one thought out. And people can't figure out why it's so important, the language patterns we use when we try to achieve our goals. Because every time you say you can't do something, guess what? You're going to have to reinforce that dozens of times just to cancel that one thought out. Caroline Leaf has a great book, Switch on Your Brain. And I believe it's in that book. She talks about there is a gap, and I think it's about 20 seconds, that when you have a negative thought, if you'll immediately change it within that time frame, and I think it's about 20 seconds, that the subconscious won't accept that thought, that you actually can change that. And so what I tell a lot of people is to have a notepad or something write down and really try to understand the negative language they use. And it's difficult. I mean, it is, because we're so conditioned to not accepting compliments. But if we can figure out these patterns and change them when it happens, then you can start seeing results. And that's one of the secrets, because if you can change your mindset, you can begin to change everything. In hypnosis, I tell people, we speak in words, but we think in pictures. If you want to change something in your life, really almost anything, all you got to do is change the picture. But how do you change the picture? By changing the words that you use to describe it. If you got to say, I'll give you a quick example of this for your listeners, especially now that we're in January. A lot of people are wanting to go to the gym, lose some weight, all that good stuff. If I say, let's say exercise, let's just say exercise. I always ask people, what comes to mind? What picture do you paint when I say the word exercise? Now, some of your listeners may say, I love exercise. Okay, this isn't for you, but you'll appreciate this either way. A lot of people would say pain, embarrassment, sweating, intimidation. So I ask them, I say, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Oh, no, that's bad. Okay, fair enough. So let's change the word a little bit and let's say something maybe not as threat. What if we said physical activity? What comes to mind? A lot of times I'll hear, I don't know, taking the dog for a walk, going for a hike in the mountains, playing a game of tennis. Fair enough. Are those more pleasant things? Yeah, I enjoy that. Okay. So now, is physical activity or is exercise physical activity? Yeah, physical activity or exercise is physical activity. And so if physical activity is exercise, the opposite has to be true. You can't have one thing equaling one. It has to be true. So why is it by simply changing a word, it painted a different picture if they equal the same thing? And that's why language is so important. The way we use our words, the way we describe things to people, but more importantly, the way we describe it to ourselves. Every time we say or criticize ourselves, we're painting that negative picture and we're creating that self-doubt. That's why when I tell people the thing that I spend the most time with people is the way we talk. If we can get a grip on that, the rest of it starts to fall into place almost automatically.
No, and I completely agree with you in that sense. Like with me, with the clients that I work with, a lot of it is mindset change.
Yeah.
And you say talk, and then same thing with mindset. One of the activities, and your picture activity reminded me of an activity that I do, which is a storyboard.
Yeah.
So I like to have them write all the things they don't like about their life as if it was a story.
Mhm.
So little Billy is currently 30 years old, lives in an apartment that he doesn't like, is not content with his weight, and really write down every single thing that they don't like. And then what I have them do and I say maximum of 1 page. Some of them a paragraph, some of them they keep going on. After they write the story, I have them highlight every single negative thing that they mentioned about themselves that is not in relation to that they can't control, things that think just like really analyze the story. And I want them to create another story as if I were to wave a magic wand and everything came true that they wanted. How would that look like? And then I have them rewrite the story. They tend to be in a more positive attitude now that they're writing positive things. And I'm like, okay, so this is the mindset I need you to look. I need you to envision yourself already having this life. Because right now, you're in the negative mindset, in the negative storyline. This person is not going to achieve all the goals they want because there's this thing called self-fulfilling bias. If they think that this is all they're ever going to get, this is all they ever will get because you will self-sabotage. You will convince yourself a million ways why not to achieve those goals. But if you envision yourself in a positive mindset, in a positive stance, already have a connection with future you, you will be 10 times more likely to accomplish that. And I'm going to go even one step further. There was a study conducted, and this is a few years ago, where they put a set of students in a classroom. And the teacher was the placebo, what was the controlled substance, where they put a teacher in a classroom and told them, these are bright kids. These are like the smartest kids that you can probably get in this country, in the state. So you're teaching a set of really bright kids, and we just need you to teach a couple classes and see how it goes. Another teacher, they told them, these are really bad kids. They are underperformed, underprivileged, are always in a bad mood. They talk back. So you're going to have a rough time teaching them. You just have to teach them a couple lessons. The ones and then the kids were random. There was no specific actual behavior patterns or anything. After the experiment was over, they saw that the students that were told the teacher that performed great actually excelled like tremendously and outperformed the ones that were told that they were bad, and the other ones actually started behaving characteristics as to they were told the teacher. So there was a big bias in the way that the teachers taught based on what the information that they were given. They automatically assumed that they were bad, so they treated them bad. They assumed that they were good and they treated them good. So self-fulfilling bias, the same thing happens with us. Self-fulfilling bias, we will tell ourselves, if I'm a bad person, then I'm never going to achieve that, then you won't, because you're not even going to try. You're going to do things that are going to correlate with that belief. So change it.
I love that. I love that story too. And it really is true. So going back to the get specific, the G and the GOAT method, number 4, the subcategory into that is you've got to be specific about the people you surround yourself with. How many times have you set a goal? I'll tell you one, last year, my daughter, she's going to be 8 here in a couple of weeks. But she's taking swim lessons and all this. And we go to the lake every summer. And I thought, you know what? Now I'm 42 right now at the time of this recording. I'm 42. And I thought, I'm going to go get my lifeguard certification. Not that I'll care to be a lifeguard, but I want to learn if she needs me to help her, because we'll do anything for our kids, then I could do that. And so what do? I did what most people do when they set a goal. I went and started telling people, friends and family, hey, I'm going to do this and do this. You know what I heard? This is what I heard time and time again. Mike, that's stupid. You're too old for that. Why in the world would you want to do something stupid like that? It's important you surround yourself with like-minded people. Now, it doesn't mean they have to have the same goal as you. they have to have the same goal-oriented mindset. They have to be people that push you and say, you can do this. You've got this. Absolutely. Because a lot of times we hear that negativity from a friend or close family member, whatever it may be. And what happens, they're telling you their limitations, not your limitations. They don't know your mindset. They don't know your drive, but yet we talk ourselves out of it because they said we can't do it. So I love your story. I love that story. That goes hand in hand with it.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I experienced the same thing. Currently this year, one of my goals is I want to run a marathon.
Yeah.
So I was never considered a runner, like growing up. I was not ever considered athletic. So this is
Right.
like brand new. Like when I told my mom, hey, this is a new goal of mine, and she started laughing. And she said, oh, you were serious. And I was like, yes, I'm very serious. She's
Yeah.
okay, good luck.
Right.
And then I told people around me and they were like, oh, okay, you're more of the academic type. I really don't see you doing stuff like that. And same thing. I was told by several people, you're insane. This is not a good idea. You're going to hurt yourself. I had one person give me a laundry list of, they did research on why not, I should not do this marathon because of how hurt I can get if I don't do it correctly. So I started joining myself with runners groups. I started
Sure.
going on online groups that
Yeah,
are also training, and that changed my mindset because there was a moment where I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't do, but like you said, because of the people around me were telling me I shouldn't and
Yeah.
bringing that mindset down. But as soon as I started hanging out with people that have done it and are training for it, it's amazing what it does to your mind.
Oh, absolutely. It breeds, it feeds off each other. Jim Rohn, I think it was Jim Rohn, anyways, that said it. Could have been Brian Tracy, and they probably all said it. If you are the average of the 5 closest people in your life, and then John Maxwell piggybacked off that, and he says, listen, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to find another room. It's so important to surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up and say, yeah, you could get hurt, but we're going to show you how not to. And you've got this. How would you tell your best friend, if your best friend said they're wanting to do something, how would you support them? If they stumble, don't worry about it. You've got this. You can do this. It's just failure is an event, not a person. But when we talk to ourselves, we bring ourselves down. But when it comes from a family member or a close friend, and I don't say you've got to cut these people out. That's where people misinterpret what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when it comes to your goals, that area, I think everybody could probably appreciate this. We tend not to act the same way around certain people. I may or may not tell the same jokes to my preacher as I would my best friend. Okay. And so we do that. And so we have to have these circles. And so when it comes to reliving the high school days, my buddy from college and that one with high school with, that's who I'm going to hang out with. And I love him dearly. He lives in the past. He's not going to be in my goal setting and goal achieving circle because he wants to live back here and I want to live in the future. And so I appreciate that story so much and admire you for wanting to do that because I am somewhat of a runner. I've never done a full marathon. I'm not going to say that's on my bucket list. It could be. Who knows? It's not yet. But I think that's awesome. We limit ourselves, and it's the whole glass ceiling. And I'm all about trying to break through barriers. Look at Roger Bannister. Nobody thought he could break the 4-minute mile until he broke the 4-minute mile. And then 2 months later, here comes another guy that breaks it. But nobody did up to that point. Other people's limits and what they think of me doesn't dictate who I am. And that's hard for a lot of people. It's hard. But once you get to that point, it's really, I don't know the word. It's a sense of relief. I don't know, but it's when you become your own person, it's a good feeling. It really is.
I completely agree. And I think when you stop seeking external validation
Yes.
and know that your own validation is enough, that your own confidence in you is enough,
Yes.
that's when you start breaking barriers. That's when you start breaking that ceiling that you're talking about. Because somebody else, like you said, you just said it right now, somebody else's reality is not your reality. Their insecurities are not yours. Their limitations are not yours.
Exactly. And one thing that I always tell when I'm speaking a lot of times, and I'll say, who knows what was very significant about December 16th, 1903? I have never had anybody say they knew that. And it was very significant. I did have somebody say, you mean December 17th? I was like, what was significant about December 16th? They say, I don't know. December 16th, 1903, the world believed it was impossible to fly. That was the belief on December 16th. But what happened December 17th? We were proven that it can happen. So nobody knows your limits. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think we even know our limits. I really don't. I've got a buddy, and he's a special forces. He's worked with the Navy SEALs. He's out now, and I got to see him a couple of weeks ago. And he says, listen, we believe in the 120%. Don't give 100%. Because when you think you've reached that, there's still more in the tank. One of my martial arts instructors, when I was competing a lot, he says, listen, there's only 3 ways you should lose. You tap out. Okay. I'm like, that can be a pretty good option sometimes. You pass out or get knocked out, or you crawl off the mat. He said, because if you can walk off that mat, you didn't give it 100%. And I thought, I do agree with what you're saying. There's times I want to be able to walk still, but we've got more in the tank. So we don't even know what we're capable of doing. So we definitely don't need to put those limits on ourselves.
No. And just because there's, like you said, certain ways that you do things doesn't mean that's the only way. That's just what we know now.
And that's what I tell people. It's so important to be open-minded, because I will almost guarantee you that nothing that we have that's been invented, and this may not be correct, but it's going to be pretty close. They got it right on the first time. Okay. My dad, he's a perfectionist. And I'm telling you, when he builds something, it's going to be dang near perfect. But even look at our cell phones. I don't know what model this one is now, but they keep improving it. Why? Because they didn't get it exactly the way they wanted it the first time. You've got to be, and I've adopted this language pattern, and I really hope that your listeners will take this and really use this. It's helped me tremendously. So I hope it can help somebody else. Is instead of trying to be perfect, start telling yourself, I'm a work in progress. And what that's done for me is, if I'm redoing my website, or I just literally, my book just got published as an ebook the other day. It'll be paperback before long. Launch it. You can always revise it. It's okay. Just launch it, because it's a work in progress. I kid you not, it went out. It did hit number 1 in a couple of little categories, which was pretty cool. And my wife goes, there's a grammatical error right here. But here's the thing about that. Before, perfectionist muck, that would have devastated. But now I'm like, I'm a work in progress. Everything is a work in progress. And I think Matthew McConaughey said it in one of his speeches, his mentor, who he admires, is him 10 years from now. And he knows he's never going to catch that guy, because 10 years from now, it's going to be him 10 years from then. That's how we need to look at this. We're a work in progress. And if we learn to enjoy the process, man, we're there. Venus Williams said, most people fail at reaching their goals because they focus on the outcome instead of the process. Focus on the process.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And the fact that the matter is, and I loved using this analogy, is that you're climbing a mountain. Yeah. And in your mind right now, you think this is the highest mountain you're ever going to climb. But as soon as you get to that peak, you're going to notice that there's way more other mountains that you still need to go through. Matt, if this is going to be life over and over again, enjoy every single day, every single step that you take up that particular mountain.
Yes. You hit it on the head. We don't know how long we've got, and you've got to be in the moment. Too many people live in 2 areas. They either live in the past, that's where depression and all that comes from, or they live in the future. That's where anxiety comes from. Live in the moment. Just take it for what it is. There was a deal I read actually today before I jump on here, and it was morbid, but it said, listen, in 100 years from now, all your stuff that your prized possessions, somebody else is probably going to throw in the trash. Okay. And I thought, wow, that's an awakening, one of those moments, and it puts things in perspective. Listen, if you're thinking about the future, that's okay to think about the future, but don't get caught up there, and don't get caught up in the past. Because my daughter, like I said, she's going to be 8 this month. She's already almost 8. It's gone by so fast. And yet I want to hang on to every little moment that I can. So I am the nerd dad that takes a million pictures, and it doesn't bother me at all, but you've got to be present.
Yeah, I love that. Now we're at the point where I'm going to ask you the last question of the podcast, and it's the premise of the podcast. So we're here to make unicorns. And for me, unicorns are people that are willing to do something different than the rest. A lot of people tend to live life, cruise through life, but not always meeting their goals, not really being happy. In my eyes, in order for you to be a unicorn, you need to do something that is authentic to you. You need to take those risks. You need to live a different lifestyle than the rest. My question for you is, what is one thing that a person can start doing today to start living that unicorn lifestyle?
What can people do today, starting today, to live their unicorn lifestyle? And I keep going back to the things that I've already said. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to fail. If you live in a state of fear, then what can you bring to the table? There was a quote, and I read this, it's been a while back. It says, "Your playing small doesn't serve the world." Okay. You've got to realize there's more in the tank. And by just being complacent, you're not helping anybody. Now, regardless of a belief system, you can add in whatever you want. I'm a Christian. I will tell you that. Doesn't matter what your belief system is. God didn't put you on earth and give you an extra day because you need that extra day. He gave you an extra day because somebody needs you. And I think that's the unicorn moment, to understand that you're here for a bigger purpose than yourself. Stop playing small. Don't listen to the naysayers out there. Go live your dream. You're going to fail, okay? It's going to happen. And people say, "Mike, listen, you got to be more positive." I'm positive you're going to fail. But failure is an event. Nothing great comes out of somebody succeeding. You will learn more from rock bottom than you will mountaintops, as long as you're learning. So go be the best that you can be. And don't let anybody else dictate who you are. You are who you are. You have been given a desire, a passion, a purpose, skills, a knowledge, a drive. Utilize that. Don't try to live somebody else's dream. That could be a nightmare. Live your dream. And don't be afraid to take those risks. And one thing for me was I was always scared about finances. What happens if Mike, I want to start a job, I want to start my own business, but financially I'm over here. And I'm not telling you what to do. But for me, making money is easy. It's easy. Now, you may have to do some things you don't want to do. I don't particularly want to go flip burgers, but you know what? If I get hungry enough, I'm going to flip some burgers. We live in America. There is nothing keeping you from reaching your goals except you. So go be your unique self. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my little motivational stance.
Yes, you did. You did. And you provided great advice. And I'm pretty sure listeners are going to appreciate that. Mike, this has been a fantastic conversation. I can probably keep you on for another few hours.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it. I love talking about this. And so thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's been a pleasure. So my last question, if a listener wants to reach out to you, work with you, or wants to purchase your book, how can they do so?
The easiest way to really stay in contact with me, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, all that. It's Speaker Mike Breeze, Breeze. You can find me that way, or go to my website. I actually think my cell phone number is on there. They can actually text me. People say I'm crazy for that. Listen, I want to be available. I wish I would have had somebody there for me when I had questions. I love to talk. My wife knows I love to talk. So I may not respond back immediately. I will respond back, but you can go to my website. It's probably the easiest way. And it's called Made and then the number 4. So it's not spelled out. It's Made and then the number 4 success.com. And they can go there. The book, it's Beyond Smart. You can find it on Amazon. It's an ebook now. So yeah. And I would love to stay in contact with your listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for listeners, if don't think that you have to write all this down, you can go down in the show notes. I'll include all the links in there. Also, if you go to my website at raygoza-consulting.com, go to the Unicorn Wall of Fame, and you'll see Mike on there with the other unicorns that have been on the show. And it'll have a link to his bio and all of that stuff in there. So thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate everything.
Yeah.
And until next time, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I truly appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained valuable insights. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. Until next time, this is Dr. Jaime G. Raygoza signing off.